Hi everyone, I'm David Fisher, and this is Presidential Chronicles, the series of books and videos on American history as seen through the lives of the Presidents of the United States. This episode is from the life of Rutherford Hayes, and the focus is family, school, and the law. It was a rough beginning for Rutherford Hayes. He never knew his father, who died a couple of months before he was born. There was a typhus outbreak. It took his father and one of his sisters, and then shortly after he was born, one of his brothers died in a drowning accident. So that left the family just with his widowed mother, Sophia, and his sister, Fanny. That was it for the family. And Rudd, as they called him when he was a boy, Rudd was also a very sickly boy. They weren't sure, in fact, if he was going to make it. And he really bonded with this close-knit family, particularly with that sister, Fanny. Fanny was, to him, my protector and nurse when I was a sickly, feeble boy, 3 or 4 years old. She would lead me carefully about the garden and barnyard, and on short visits to the nearest neighbors. They bonded just about over everything in their youth. By far, the closest relationship that Rudd Hayes would have was with his sister, Fanny. Now, fortunately, the Hayeses didn't need to worry about money because Sophia owned a farm near their home in Delaware, Ohio. But even more than that, which basically covered the bills, they had a financial benefactor, and that was Hayes' uncle, Sardis Birchard. Now, he was a key person in Hayes' life really throughout for many, many years. Sometimes an uncle, sometimes more of a father figure, sometimes a brother, a pen pal, and he was also a money man because Sardis Birchard had made a lot of money in land speculation. He never got married himself. He didn't really have a family of his own, so he pretty much stayed with the Hayeses, very generous financially, pretty much whenever they needed it. It was also a motivator from an educational standpoint. Both Sophia and Uncle Sardis believed in a strong education. And this was also an area that was kind of a rough start for Hayes because he was an amiable, friendly kind of boy, and he was really at odds with the harsh discipline of the headmaster of the local school, Daniel Granger. It was a real turnoff to Hayes. And so he kind of turned away from academics, and to the point where Fanny, the sister, chided him over this because this is what she wanted more than anything, the opportunity to pursue academics. For a girl, there weren't very many opportunities, and she thought that her brother was sort of throwing it all away. She said to him that she kind of had contempt for his romantic notion that the ignorant farmer boy is happier than the student, adding her belief that the literary man has 1,000 sources of enjoyment that the rustic never has, is what she told him. And he eventually kind of started to come around. Because at the age of 14, he started to take academics more seriously. Spent a year at the Norwalk Seminary, and then he made his big move academically to Isaac Webb's Academy. This was in Middletown, Connecticut. Now, for Mom Sophia, too far away. She didn't want to send her boy Rudd that far away, but Sardis convinced her to trust Webb. He was a Yale grad. He had the right principles. He would take care of her. So she agreed, and in 1837, that it was time for Hayes to go off on his own, and he actually really reveled in this opportunity. He went to Connecticut, he enrolled in Webb's Academy, he explored New England, made lots of friends, did well in the classroom. This was a really good experience for Hayes, a little bit of a coming out for him, and fortunately he had Sardis along to foot the bill. $250 a year, he couldn't afford that, but fortunately his uncle could. Well, after just 1 year at the Webb Academy, now he's starting to talk about college. So Sardis and Webb both said, well, it's time to go to Yale. They wanted him to go and continue in the East. But Mother Sophia said, no, my boy's coming home. This is too far away. I can't trust the values of the East Coast. I want him here in this area. And on the frontier, there weren't many college options. And so where did Hayes end up? Kenyon College. This was in Gambier, Ohio, just about 40 miles away from the Hayes' home. And he entered it at the age of 16, and again, he did really well. There's one area, once again, he didn't care for. There was a lot of discipline at this school. He thought it was unnecessary, and that part kind of repelled him. But other than that, he really thrived at Kenyon College. He liked the people. They liked him. He had this outgoing personality. He got along with everyone. And there were people from all walks of life at Kenyon. This was a bit of an eye-opening experience for Hayes. In particular, one friend who would be a friend for life, boy by the name of Bryan. could not have been more the opposite from a background. Bryan came from a plantation-owning, slave-owning family in Texas, so they had a very different worldview, but they bonded over many things, and Hayes found that he could really get along with people that he even disagreed with. In fact, he and Bryan would have a robust correspondence throughout their entire lives, often talking about difficult subjects around which they disagreed, but they always did it in a friendly, respectful manner, and it was sort of the way that Hayes engaged with people, because again, he was popular at Kenyon College, and he didn't mind debate. In fact, he enjoyed it. The Philomathesian Society, debating society, was one that he joined. He became the president of that group in his senior year, and again, oftentimes very popular, outgoing, friendly, and he enjoyed the experience. What about politics? Well, Hayes had a long interest in politics from his teenage years, and his original idol was George Washington, not a big surprise, and he had recently gravitated to the modern politics of Henry Clay and the Whig Party, so he was really excited to root for their candidate for president, originally in 1836. This is William Henry Harrison. He didn't win in 36, but when he ran again in 1840, Hayes was all in. He attended a big rally in Columbus, Ohio, and was thrilled when it looked like William Henry Harrison was going to win the presidency, when Hayes said, "The whirlwind has swept over the land and General Harrison is undoubtedly elected president. I never was more elated in my life. It is glorious." And so he was excited, and then of course disappointed when Harrison died just 1 month into office. But the toughest experience for Hayes during college, it wasn't school, it wasn't politics, it was back home. His sister Fanny. Now, she had gotten married and given birth to a young baby girl in 1842, but there were complications, and the girl died in infancy, and Fanny, frankly, was never the same, either physically or emotionally. And the family was ill-equipped to deal with what she was going through. So she was actually hospitalized in the nearest asylum. Hayes really wanted to come home, visit his sister, be a part of this, but the doctor said no, she needs to be isolated to be able to get well. So for 4.5 months, she was in that asylum. It was very difficult for the entire family. And frankly, even when she came home, she was really never the same. Fanny obviously then had to miss Hayes' graduation. His mom and his uncle were there. They were cheering his valedictory remarks, and now Hayes had a key decision to make. What was he going to do next? Well, he kind of wanted to serve. He wanted to be in service to others, and so he thought about professions, perhaps the military, maybe politics, or the law, and eventually he chose the latter. Now, law at the time, typically you would go into training where you would read the law with an established attorney, and this is where Hayes started out with Thomas Sparrow as his initial mentor, but his uncle Sardis had other ideas. He said, "Look, I've got some money. We can afford better. We can actually send you to college for law school," which there weren't very many, but one, the oldest one in the country, was at Harvard, and he got in. Hayes said yes, and he actually went to Harvard Law for 3 semesters, where he learned enough at that point. He said, "You know what? I'm good to go. I'm ready to re-enter the world as a professional." And he said in 1843 he was ready to begin to live. "Heretofore I have been getting ready to live. My labors have been to cultivate and store my mind. But now I will strive to become in manners, morals, and feelings a true gentleman. The rudeness of a student must be laid off, and the quiet, manly deportment of a gentleman put on." He was ready to go to work, be a man of his own, got back to Ohio, where he was admitted to the bar almost immediately, and he settled a little bit north from home. He went to Lower Sandusky, which is later called Fremont, Ohio. Why did he go there? Well, it was close to Uncle Sardis. Uncle Sardis had his home in a place called Spiegel Grove, and this is where Hayes wanted to surround himself. So he entered into a partnership with Ralph Buckland, and their law firm got off to a very slow start. I mean, a very slow start. He survived, frankly, only because of the largesse of Sardis, who was helping to pay his bills. He had very few clients. He was bored. He had plenty of time to read. He was learning more and more about the law because he read a lot. He just wasn't getting a lot of chances to practice or, frankly, to make much money on his own. Well, he was also disappointed politically at that time when the Democrat James Polk beat out his current idol, Henry Clay, in the election of 1844. This was the period of manifest destiny, and Polk was about to lead his country into war with Mexico, in large part to get more land and expand his own country. And this war did kick off in 1846, and Rutherford Hayes wanted to go. but his doctor said no. A really bad sore throat. In fact, it was bleeding. It was quite serious. And his doctor said, you need rest. You cannot be going off to war. Hayes said, okay, but he wanted to get away. And for this rest, he and Sardis decided to take a trip. And they, in fact, went south, not as far as Mexico. They got as far as Texas. They went to go visit his college friend, Bryan, on his plantation. And this, again, was a sugar plantation in the middle of Texas. Slave country, they had slaves. This was a very eye-opening experience for Hayes, but he really enjoyed his time in Texas. It was relaxing. He made side visits to Austin, San Antonio. He got to know the people, and he and Uncle Sardis had a really good time. They stayed about 3 months, and most importantly, he got healthy. In fact, he said he was never feeling healthier. It was time to get back home. It was time to get back to work, and in fact, it was time for a change. It's now 1849. Rutherford Hayes is 27 years old. He says it's time to go to the big city. And in the frontier area in Ohio, that meant Cincinnati. And the bachelor lawyer was on his way. That, though, is the story for another day. That is Rutherford Hayes, his family, school, and the law. From the life of Rutherford Hayes. For more presidential chronicles, check out my books on Amazon.com, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Until next time, I'm David Fisher, and this is Presidential Chronicles.